They say you can't choose your family. And for most of my life, I believed that was a comfort, a sacred bond. Now looking back, I realize it was a cage, one I built with my own 2 hands, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. The memory still stings, a phantom ache in bones that have seen too many winters. I was 28 then, a nurse in Asheville, North Carolina, and my life was a carefully constructed mosaic of shifts, meal prep, and the endless demands of family. My apartment, a cozy little place tucked away from the bustle of downtown, often felt less like a sanctuary and more like a revolving door. I remember nights after a double shift, dragging myself home, only to find Naomi, my cousin, curled on the sofa, still reeling from her last fight with her ex. She was 27 then, a year younger than me, and had found refuge with me after escaping a truly oppressive relationship. I'd cook her a simple meal, listen to her talk until the early hours, and then somehow pull myself together for another day. It wasn't just Naomi. It was always someone, a sick aunt, a friend needing a ride, or more often than not, Jason. Jason, my older brother, was 30 then, all charm and grand ideas, constantly chasing the next big thing. He had a way of making you believe in his vision, even when it was built on thin air. I remember the first time he asked for a loan for one of his ventures. It was for some app that promised to revolutionize dog walking. I was 22, just starting my nursing career, barely making ends meet, but he looked at me with those earnest eyes, talking about family investing in family, about how he'd pay me back with interest, and how this was for our future. I gave him what little I had, telling myself it was an investment in trust, in keeping our family together. That was the first of many. Each time, a new groundbreaking idea, a new plea, and each time, I'd find a way to scrape together the money, hoping to support him, to preserve that fragile sense of familial loyalty. Our family gatherings, usually around Betty's, our mother's kitchen table, were always a production. Mom, 65 then, was a loving woman, but she had a knack for making me feel like the designated financial safety net. "Emily, honey, you'll cover the bill for dinner tonight, won't you?" she'd say, not asking, but stating, as if it were a foregone conclusion. Jason would just grin, a conspiratorial glint in his eye. "Yeah, Em, you're the responsible one. We're just living our best lives, right?" He'd often follow up with a playful nudge. Say, "A little help with my utilities this month? Just a small bridge loan until my next big deal closes." It was always a joke, always lighthearted, but the expectation was a heavy cloak I wore silently. I remember one particular Sunday dinner, the aroma of Mom's roast chicken filling the air. We were all laughing, or at least I was trying to. I'd just picked up the tab for our family vacation to the beach, a gift I could barely afford. Jason was holding court, recounting some exaggerated tale of a business meeting, while Mom beamed proudly. I stepped into the kitchen to grab more napkins, and that's when I heard it. Betty's voice, hushed but clear, to our Aunt Grace. "Oh, Emily, she's always been so good about taking care of things. A real rock. What would we do without her?" Aunt Grace chuckled softly. "She certainly keeps you all afloat, doesn't she? Good thing she's a nurse. Always got steady income." The words, meant as a compliment, landed like a punch to the gut. It wasn't gratitude I heard, but a casual, almost entitled expectation. A quiet, unsettling feeling settled over me, a chill that had nothing to do with the cool evening air. It was the first tremor, the faint whisper that my sacrifices were not just taken for granted, but perhaps were seen as my natural, unburdened duty. The family dynamics, I realized, were shifting, and I was standing on increasingly shaky ground. The unsettling feeling from that Sunday dinner, the one where I overheard Mom and Aunt Grace, didn't dissipate. Instead, it festered, a quiet hum beneath the surface of my daily life. It was like a tiny crack appearing in a perfectly painted wall. You try to ignore it, paint over it even, but you know it's there, threatening to spiderweb. A few months later, maybe late spring, we had a family barbecue at Betty's place. The air was thick with the smell of grilling burgers and blooming azaleas. I'd just come off a particularly grueling shift, my feet aching, but I still brought my famous potato salad, knowing it was expected. Jason was there, holding court as usual, laughing loudly with some distant cousins. I watched him, a strange mix of affection and irritation churning inside me. He caught my eye, flashed that charming smile, and then, without missing a beat, called out, "Hey, Em, still saving lives, one bedpan at a time." The laughter that followed felt like a slap. It wasn't malicious, not overtly, but it was dismissive. "Just nursing," he'd added, waving a hand casually, as if my profession, my dedication, my exhaustion was nothing more than a quaint hobby. The word stung. I'd spent years studying, working my way up, pouring my heart into caring for strangers, and to him, it was just nursing. I forced a smile, a practiced reflex, and mumbled something about needing more ice. But the sting lingered, a sharp reminder of how little he truly valued my hard work, how easily he could diminish it. It wasn't an isolated incident. Over the next few months, these little slights, these casual assumptions, started piling up. There was my cousin Sarah's wedding, a big affair that summer. I'd offered to help with anything, as I always did. I could manage the guest list, coordinate vendors, even help with the floral arrangements. I was good at organizing. But when the planning meeting started, I found myself consistently excluded. Betty and Grace would talk excitedly about dress fittings and cake tastings, and if I asked, they'd just say, "Oh, honey, we didn't want to bother you. You're so busy with work." Yet, they'd readily accept my offer to pay for the open bar or contribute a substantial amount to the honeymoon fund. Then came the wedding day itself. I remember standing awkwardly during the group photos, always on the periphery. First, the bridal party, then immediate family. I was in the latter, of course, but always seemed to be placed at the very edge, half hidden behind someone else, or asked to step aside for a better shot of the core group. I saw the photos later, and it was true. I was barely visible, a ghost in the background of my own family's celebration. It wasn't a conscious snub, I told myself, but it felt like a quiet erasure, a subtle message that I was there to support, not to be celebrated. Each interaction, each casual dismissal, each exclusion chipped away at me. I'd lie awake some nights, replaying conversations, feeling the sting all over again. I'd think about confronting them, about telling Jason how much his jokes hurt, about asking Betty why my contributions were always expected but never truly acknowledged. But then the fear of upsetting the peace would creep in. I was the rock, the steady one. Confrontation felt like shaking the foundation, and I couldn't bear the thought of causing a rift, of being seen as difficult or ungrateful. So I'd swallow the words, force a smile, and remain accommodating. It was easier, I told myself, to keep the peace, even if it meant sacrificing a piece of myself. This pattern continued for several more months, blurring into the early fall. My 29th birthday had just passed, quietly, with a small dinner with Naomi and a few friends. The family had sent cards, of course, but no big fuss. It felt like a stark contrast to Jason's 30th earlier that year, which had been a huge party, largely funded by my loan for his latest, still unprofitable venture. Then came the call. It was Tuesday evening. I was just unwinding after a long shift. Jason's voice, smooth as ever, but with an underlying urgency I hadn't heard before. "Hey, Em, got a big favor to ask, a really big one. This is huge for Mom, for all of us. Can you meet me tomorrow?" My stomach clenched. A favor from Jason always meant money, and a really big one set off alarm bells I'd learned to ignore for years. But the way he said, "for Mom, for all of us," twisted my gut. It sounded important, vital even. Yet there was something in his tone, a hurried eagerness that felt off. It wasn't the usual playful coaxing. It was a demand wrapped in an appeal to family loyalty. A gnawing anxiety settled deep in my chest, a cold premonition that this time the favor would be different, and the cost far greater than anything I'd paid before. The gnawing anxiety from Jason's call was a constant companion that night, a cold knot in my stomach. It was early fall, the leaves just starting to turn, and the crisp air usually brought a sense of renewal. Not this time. I met him the next day at a coffee shop, not far from my apartment. He was already there, looking impeccably put together, a stark contrast to my still tired nurse self. He flashed his usual dazzling smile, the one that could charm anyone, even me, despite the growing list of slights. "Em, thanks for coming," he started, leaning forward, his voice low and earnest. "This is big, really big. I found it, the golden ticket for Mom." He launched into his pitch, a whirlwind of tech jargon and buzzwords I barely understood. It was a disruptive startup, something about AI-driven personal finance, poised to revolutionize the market. He spoke of projections, of early investors getting in on the ground floor, of exponential growth. But the core of his appeal wasn't the technology. It was Mom. "Think about it, Em," he said, his eyes locking onto mine, earnest and intense. "Mom's worked her whole life. She deserves to live comfortably, to not worry about every penny. Her retirement fund, it's just sitting there barely earning anything. This is a chance to truly secure her future, to give her the financial independence she deserves. We're talking about a return that could double, triple her savings in a few years. Imagine what that would mean for her." He painted a vivid picture. Mom traveling, enjoying her golden years without a care, all thanks to us. More specifically, thanks to him. He made it sound like a selfless act, a way for us, her children, to finally give back to the woman who had given us everything. And I, ever the dutiful daughter, the one who always wanted to ensure Mom's comfort, found myself listening, my defenses slowly eroding. My desire to help Mom, to truly make her secure, was a deep, unwavering current in me. Jason knew exactly how to tap into it. "I need her retirement fund, Em," he said, finally getting to the point. "All of it. It's a significant investment, but that's how you get significant returns. I can't do this without you. Mom trusts you with her finances, doesn't she? She's always said you're the sensible one. If you help me, if you endorse this, she'll go for it." He was right. Mom, bless her heart, had always been a bit overwhelmed by financial matters. She trusted me implicitly, often asking me to review her statements, pay bills, or help her navigate online banking. She'd even given me limited access to some of her accounts for these very purposes, a testament to her faith in my responsibility. It wasn't full power of attorney, but enough to facilitate transfers if I had her explicit permission. The gnawing anxiety returned, a cold prickle at the back of my neck. This was a huge amount of money, Mom's entire future. But Jason's charm was a powerful force. He spoke with such conviction, such passion, and the vision he painted for Mom was so compelling. He wasn't asking for a loan this time. He was asking me to partner with him, to help Mom. And after all the sacrifices, all the small loans, all the times I'd felt taken for granted, this felt like a chance to make a real difference, to finally secure Mom's future in a way my nursing salary never could. Over the next few weeks, Jason was relentless. He provided glossy brochures, talked about due diligence, and even set up a meeting with a supposed financial advisor, Ansorgi, a slick young man who echoed Jason's every point. I remember Mom being hesitant at first, her brow furrowed with worry. "All of it, Jason? Are you sure?" she'd asked, her voice small, but Jason had just smiled, put an arm around her, and said, "Mom, Emily's on board. She's reviewed everything. We're doing this for you." And I, caught in the current of his conviction, had nodded, a silent endorsement that sealed her fate. During this time, I did hear whispers. At a casual family lunch, Naomi, ever observant, pulled me aside. "Em, are you really sure about this Jason thing? He's always got a scheme, but Mom's retirement, that's different." Even Aunt Grace, who usually kept her distance, made a pointed comment. "Jason's always been good at talking people into things, hasn't he? Just make sure you read the fine print, dear." I brushed them off, attributing their concerns to their usual skepticism about Jason's ventures. I told myself they just didn't understand the opportunity. I wanted so badly for this to be real, for Jason to finally succeed, for Mom to be genuinely secure. The day came when the documents were ready. We were at Mom's kitchen table, the same table where I'd overheard those casual, dismissive comments months ago. Jason was beaming. Mom looked a mix of nervous and hopeful. I sat there, the pen in my hand, ready to sign the authorization form that would transfer a significant portion of Mom's retirement savings to Jason's new company, believing it was an investment for her, not by her. As I signed, my hand felt strangely heavy. A cold, sharp twinge of doubt, like a shard of ice, pierced through me. It wasn't a warning bell, not yet. More like a faint, unsettling echo in an empty room. I pushed it down, telling myself it was just nerves, the weight of responsibility. I was doing this for Mom, for our family. I was completely unaware that I wasn't securing her future, but unwittingly handing it over to the very person who would shatter it. The call came 2 weeks after I signed those papers, 2 weeks after that cold twinge of doubt I'd pushed aside. It was a Tuesday late afternoon. I'd just gotten home from my shift, still in my scrubs, kicking off my shoes by the door. The phone rang, and it was Mom. Her voice, usually so steady, was a thin, reedy whisper, barely recognizable. Emily, oh, Emily, honey, something's wrong. Something is terribly, terribly wrong. My heart instantly began to pound, a frantic drum against my ribs. Mom, what is it? Are you okay? No, I'm not. The bank, I just got a statement. It's empty, Emily. My account, my retirement, it's all gone. Her voice broke, dissolving into a ragged sob. Jason, he said it was for the investment. He said it was for my future. But the bank said, they said the company filed for bankruptcy. It's gone, Emily. Everything. Decades of saving just vanished. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. Empty. All gone. The world tilted. The cozy familiarity of my apartment suddenly alien. My knees buckled, and I sank onto the floor. The phone pressed so hard against my ear it hurt. What? No, Mom. That can't be right. He said it was a sure thing. He said it was for your future. The words tasted like ash in my mouth, the bitter irony, a cruel twist. I had believed him. I had helped him. He lied, Emily, she choked out, her voice thick with tears and disbelief. He lied to us, to me, to you. I don't understand. How could he? How could my own son? The raw pain in her voice was unbearable, a sound that would haunt me for years. It wasn't just the money. It was the shattering of trust, the ultimate betrayal from a son she adored. My own world crashed around me. The pieces of my carefully constructed life, built on loyalty and sacrifice, disintegrated. The memory of Jason's earnest eyes, his smooth talk, the glossy brochures, the financial advisor, all of it now twisted into a grotesque mockery. My brother, the one I had consistently supported, defended, and financially propped up for years, had not only gambled away Mom's entire future, but had used me as an unwitting accomplice. The betrayal was a searing burn, far deeper than any of his casual slights. This wasn't just a joke about my career. This was a deliberate, calculated act that had stolen everything from our mother. I don't remember hanging up, only the ringing silence that followed. My hands were shaking so violently I had to clench them into fists. A cold fury, unlike anything I'd ever felt, began to simmer beneath. The shock. I called Jason. He didn't answer. I called again and again, my voice growing hoarse with each attempt. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he picked up. "What do you want, Em?" he said, his voice flat, devoid of his usual charm. The casualness of it infuriated me further. "What do I want?" I shrieked, my voice cracking. "What do I want? Mom just called me, Jason. She said her retirement fund is empty. What the hell did you do?" There was a beat of silence, then a sigh. "Look, Em, I know this looks bad, but it was a calculated risk. The market just turned. No one could have predicted it." "No one could have predicted it," I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping me. "You told us it was a sure thing. You told us it was for Mom's future. You emptied her entire life savings into some failing tech startup." "It wasn't failing when I invested," he snapped, his voice rising, losing its composure. "It was a growth opportunity. You just never understood the risks, Em. You're a nurse. You deal with predictable outcomes. Business is different. It's volatile. Predictable outcomes?" My voice was trembling, but with rage now, not fear. I understood that Mom needed her money to live. I understood that you manipulated me, Jason. You used my trust. You used Mom's trust to gamble away everything she worked for. How could you belittle my feelings of betrayal? How could you do this to her? Oh, come on, Em. Don't be so dramatic. We'll figure it out. I'll make it back. I always do. His tone was dismissive, condescending, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. It was the final straw, the years of accommodating, of swallowing my hurt for the sake of peace, shattered. No, I said, my voice suddenly calm, chillingly so. No, you won't. Not with my help. Not ever again. What's that supposed to mean? He demanded, a flicker of irritation in his voice. It means I'm done, I stated, the words feeling like a heavy stone dropping into place. I'm done helping you. I'm done covering for you. I'm done pretending this is okay. Don't call me. Don't come to my apartment. Don't come to Mom's. Just stay away. I heard him scoff, a sound of disbelief, but I didn't wait for his reply. I hung up the phone, my hand still shaking, but a strange, fierce resolve hardening in my chest. He could belittle my feelings. He could dismiss my understanding, but he could no longer control me. The anger was a burning fire, but beneath it, a tiny, defiant spark of survival instinct had ignited. He had broken our family, and in doing so, he had, for the first time, set me free. I stood there, feeling a profound mix of anger and despair, but also a nascent sense of power I hadn't known I possessed. The ringing silence, after I hung up on Jason, was deafening. My apartment, usually a haven, felt like a cage, the walls closing in. The fury that had propelled me through the call slowly receded, replaced by a cold, hollow ache. My mind reeled, replaying Mom's trembling voice, Jason's dismissive tone. How could I have been so blind, so foolish? I spent the next few hours in a daze, pacing my living room. My heart was still racing, a frantic hummingbird trapped in my chest. I picked up my phone, scrolled through my contacts, hovering over Jason's name, then Mom's. What could I even say to her? I'm sorry I helped him steal your life savings. The words were a bitter poison. My gaze fell on a framed photo on my bookshelf, a snapshot from that family barbecue, the one where Jason had made the just nursing joke. Everyone was smiling, a picture of perfect familial bliss. But looking at it now, I could see the cracks, the subtle shifts I'd ignored. Jason, always at the center, Mom beaming at him, me on the edge, a faint forced smile on my face. I remembered the growing distance, the way he'd become harder to reach, more evasive about his ventures. I dismissed it as him being busy, focused. Now, it was clear. He was distancing himself because he was planning, calculating. The thought made me sick. I felt a visceral need to escape, to just disappear. Impulsively, I called in sick to work for the next day. A decision I hadn't made in years. My supervisor, understanding my strained voice, simply told me to rest. I then locked my apartment door, double-checking the deadbolt, as if to ward off the outside world, or perhaps to keep myself from crumbling entirely. The isolation was profound, a heavy blanket, but beneath it, I felt a strange, almost liberating sense of freedom. No one to care for, no one to answer to, no one to disappoint, just me and the wreckage of my trust. I spent the next day in a fog. I didn't eat. I barely moved from the sofa, staring blankly at the TV, not really seeing anything. My phone buzzed occasionally. A text from Naomi asking if I was okay. A unmissed call from Mom's landline that I couldn't bring myself to answer. I felt paralyzed, overwhelmed by the enormity of what had happened, by the depth of Jason's betrayal, and by my own complicity. As the day wore on, a different kind of feeling started to emerge, a slow burn beneath the despair. It was anger, yes, but also a fierce protectiveness for Mom. She didn't deserve this. She was a kind, loving woman who had worked her entire life, and I, her daughter, had facilitated her ruin. The guilt was a heavy weight, but it also sparked something, a need for action. Late that afternoon, my phone rang again. It was Marcus Thompson, a colleague from the hospital, a kind, steady presence in the chaos of the ER. He was 35, a few years older than me, and always had a way of cutting through the noise. He'd seen me at my most stressed, my most exhausted, and always offered a quiet word of encouragement or a shared coffee. "Hey, Em," he said, his voice gentle. "Heard you called in sick. Everything all right?" I hesitated. Then, to my surprise, the words tumbled out. Not all of it. Not the full, ugly truth, but enough. "No, Marcus, nothing's all right. My brother, he basically stole my mom's retirement, used me to do it." There was a pause, then a soft sigh. "Oh, Em, I'm so sorry. That's rough. Family can be the worst, sometimes." "You have no idea," I muttered, tears pricking my eyes. "Actually," he said, his voice a little softer, "I might. My own sister, she did something similar a few years back. Not retirement funds, but a pretty significant inheritance. Left my parents in a real bind. I know what that feels like, that punch to the gut." His words were a lifeline, a glimpse of solidarity in my profound solitude. I hadn't realized how desperately I needed to hear that I wasn't alone, that someone else understood this particular brand of pain. He didn't offer platitudes or try to fix it. He just listened, and then he said, "Look, I'm no lawyer, but I had to dig into a lot of stuff back then. Financial rights, legal options. There are resources, Em. Don't just sit there. Don't let him get away with it." His words, simple and direct, were a jolt. Don't let him get away with it. The phrase resonated, cutting through the fog of despair. He was right. I couldn't just sit here and wallow. Mom needed me. I needed me. After we hung up, a new kind of energy surged through me. I pulled out my laptop, my fingers still trembling slightly, but now with purpose. I started with a simple search: financial fraud family, reclaiming stolen retirement funds. The legal jargon was dense, overwhelming, but I kept reading. Every article, every forum post, every legal aid website felt like a small step out of the abyss. The first inklings of empowerment, a tiny flicker of hope, began to stir within me. The isolation was still there, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was becoming a space for me to gather my thoughts, to strategize, to fight. The research I started after Marcus's call became my obsession. I devoured articles, read legal aid websites, and learned more about financial fraud than I ever thought I'd need to know. The initial fog of despair slowly lifted, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. I wasn't just grieving. I was preparing for battle. A few days later, after countless phone calls and emails, I secured an appointment with Mr. Thompson, the family lawyer. Not Marcus Thompson, my colleague, but the lawyer our family had used for wills and minor property disputes for years. He was a man in his late 50s, with kind, tired eyes and a reputation for being meticulous. I remember sitting in his office, the scent of old books and polished wood filling the air. I expected judgment, or at least a thinly veiled "I told you so." Instead, he listened, his expression grave but attentive, as I recounted everything. Jason's pitch, my unwitting involvement, Mom's frantic call. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful frown on his face. "Emily," he said, his voice calm and measured, "what your brother did, using your mother's retirement funds for a high-risk, speculative investment without her informed consent, especially under the guise of securing her future, is not only deeply unethical, but potentially illegal. And your involvement, while misguided, was based on a fundamental breach of trust by Jason. He didn't blame me. He treated me with respect, with a dignity that had been sorely lacking in my family interactions for years. It was a stark contrast to Jason's belittling comments, to Mom's casual expectations, even to my own self-recrimination. He saw me not as a naive accomplice, but as a victim of a calculated deception, and more importantly, as the only one willing to fight. Then came the pivotal moment. Mr. Thompson began to outline the legal avenues available. Given your mother's vulnerability and your brother's history of financial instability, we have grounds to pursue this. We can argue for a return of her assets, potentially even through a forced sale of his shares in the family home, if necessary, to cover the loss. My eyes widened. The family home, the house where Mom lived, the house that had always been the anchor of our family, the place Jason considered his birthright. It was a tangible asset, something real, something that could be leveraged. A realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. My family's dependence on me was deeper than I had ever truly understood. It wasn't just about covering dinner bills or lending money for a dog walking app. It was about my steady income, my responsible nature, my willingness to always step in. They had relied on me to be the financial bedrock, and Jason had exploited that, not just with Mom, but with me, for years. To build our case, Mr. Thompson continued, pulling out a legal pad, we'll need to document everything. Any emails, texts, bank statements related to this investment, and frankly, any other financial contributions you've made to your family over the years. It helps establish a pattern of reliance and, unfortunately, exploitation. That last part hit me hard. Exploitation. It was a harsh word, but it resonated with the quiet, unsettling feeling I'd had for so long. I went home that evening and started digging. I pulled out old bank statements, scanned through years of digital transactions. The numbers were staggering. Loans to Jason for various ventures, the dog walking app, a bespoke coffee subscription service, a revolutionary social media platform, payments for Mom's car repairs, utility bills, even groceries when her pension wasn't quite enough, contributions to family vacations, wedding gifts, birthday presents that far exceeded what anyone else gave. I created a spreadsheet, meticulously logging every cent. The total grew line by line, year by year. It wasn't just a few thousand here and there. It was a substantial sum, money I could have used for my own future, my own apartment upgrades, my own peace of mind. I had provided so much and received so little in return, save for the fleeting feeling of being the responsible one, the rock. The financial evidence laid bare the true nature of our family dynamic, a one-sided ledger of my generosity and their casual acceptance. As I looked at the final sum, a surge of confidence, cold and clear, washed over me. This wasn't just about Mom's retirement anymore. This was about reclaiming my own worth, about drawing a line in the sand that should have been drawn years ago. Jason had played a dangerous game, and he had used my loyalty as his biggest chip. But now I had the evidence, I had the law, and I had a lawyer who saw my strength, not just my vulnerability. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, I felt like I had a weapon. I closed my laptop, a grim, determined smile on my face. It was time to strategize my next moves against Jason. The spreadsheet I'd created, detailing years of my financial contributions, lay open on my desk, a stark testament to the imbalance. It fueled a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. The next morning, armed with Mr. Thompson's advice and a newfound steel in my spine, I took decisive action. First, I called Mom. It was a difficult conversation, filled with her quiet sobs and my own carefully controlled emotions. I explained, as gently as I could, that we needed to protect what little she had left. With her permission, I went to her bank, closed her old accounts, and opened new ones, ensuring Jason had no access whatsoever. It felt both terrifying and liberating, severing a financial tether that had bound us to his whims for too long. The bank manager, understanding the gravity of the situation, expedited the process, offering quiet words of support. Next, I sent a formal letter, drafted with Mr. Thompson's guidance, to Jason. It outlined our intent to pursue legal action for the recovery of Mom's funds and demanded a full accounting of his investment. It also stated unequivocally that any further attempts to access Mom's finances or contact her directly about the matter would be met with legal repercussions. This was not a request. It was a declaration of war. The family pressure started almost immediately. Mom, bless her heart, was caught in the middle. She called me, her voice wavering. "Jason's so upset, Emily. He says you're overreacting. He says you're tearing the family apart." "Mom," I said, my voice firm, "Jason tore the family apart when he stole your retirement. I am protecting you. This isn't an overreaction. It's a necessary step to ensure you have a future." Then came Jason. He didn't call. He showed up at my apartment unannounced a few days after receiving the letter. I heard his impatient knocking, then his insistent ringing of the doorbell. I took a deep breath, reminded myself of the spreadsheet, of Mom's tears, and opened the door, keeping the chain lock on. "What the hell, Em?" he demanded, his face flushed with anger, his usual charm replaced by a raw, desperate edge. "What's with this legal garbage? And why did you freeze Mom's accounts? She can't even pay her bills." "She can pay her bills just fine," I countered, my voice steady, my emotional composure holding firm. "Just not from the accounts you had access to. I changed them." And the legal garbage, as you call it, is a formal notice that we're pursuing the return of Mom's stolen retirement funds. His eyes widened, a flicker of panic replacing his anger. "Stolen? Emily, you're being ridiculous. It was an investment. You were there. You signed the papers." "I signed papers based on your lies, Jason," I said, my voice cutting through his bluster. "You presented it as a secure investment for Mom's future, not a high-risk gamble with her entire life savings. That's called misrepresentation, and it's illegal. Mr. Thompson agrees." He scoffed, but there was a tremor in his voice. "Thompson, you're actually getting a lawyer involved? This is insane. We're family." "We were family," I corrected him, the words tasting like ash but feeling true. "You broke that trust, Jason. You broke Mom's trust, and you broke mine. The consequences of your actions are real. You gambled away her future, and now you will be held accountable. Every cent you took, you will pay back." He stared at me, his mouth agape, the realization slowly dawning on him. The casual expectation of my support, the easy access to Mom's funds, the belief that I would always cover for him, it was all gone. His face, usually so confident, crumpled slightly. The financial support he had taken for granted, the safety net I had always been, was no longer there. He no longer had a well to draw from, no one to bail him out. He was on his own. You can't do this," he stammered, his voice losing its force, replaced by a desperate plea. "I'll lose everything, the house, Mom's house." "You should have thought about that before you emptied her retirement," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Now, if you want to discuss this, it will be through Mr. Thompson. Otherwise, I suggest you leave." He stood there for another long moment, his shoulders slumping, the fight draining out of him. He knew I meant it. He knew I wasn't backing down. He turned, a ghost of his former charismatic self, and walked away, leaving me standing at my door, the chain lock still firmly in place. The silence that followed was different this time. It wasn't despair. It was the quiet hum of power, of boundaries finally established, of a life being reclaimed. Jason was scrambling for stability, and for the first time, it wasn't my problem to solve. The confrontation with Jason at my door marked a turning point. The legal process, guided by Mr. Thompson, moved forward with a quiet, relentless efficiency. There were more tense phone calls, more formal letters, and eventually a mediated settlement. Jason, faced with the undeniable evidence of his misrepresentation and the threat of a full-blown lawsuit that would expose his financial recklessness, capitulated. The agreement required him to repay every cent he had siphoned from Mom's retirement fund. Crucially, his shares in the family home, the very asset he had once considered his birthright, were transferred into Mom's name, ensuring her security. It wasn't a loud victory, but a quiet, profound restoration of justice. In the wake of the legal battle, my life began to settle into a new, more peaceful rhythm. My apartment, once a place of constant family demands, was now truly my sanctuary. I filled it with things that brought me joy, vibrant green plants that thrived under my care, and photos of friends, Naomi, Marcus, and other colleagues, their smiles genuine, their presence uncomplicated. These were the people who respected my boundaries, celebrated my aspirations, and didn't see me as an endless resource. Naomi, after witnessing the full extent of Jason's betrayal and my resolve, had become a steadfast ally. She often came over, not for refuge from an abusive relationship anymore, but for quiet evenings of shared meals and honest conversation. She had started therapy too, inspired by my stand, and was slowly rebuilding her own life, free from the shadows of her past. Marcus continued to be a supportive presence at work, offering a knowing glance or a quick coffee when I needed it most. He never pried, but his quiet understanding was a balm. The family, as I had known it, was fractured. Jason had moved out of Mom's house, unable to face the consequences of his actions or the quiet judgment in Mom's eyes. He was struggling, I heard through the grapevine, scrambling to find stable work, his grand entrepreneurial dreams having evaporated. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a distant sadness for the brother I had lost. The rift between us was irrevocable, a chasm carved by betrayal. Mom, at 65, was forced to confront a harsh new reality. The financial hit had been devastating, but with the legal settlement, she had her principal back, albeit without the years of potential growth. She struggled at first, the emotional toll of Jason's actions weighing heavily on her. But slowly, with my patient guidance and practical help, she began to rebuild. We set up a new, conservative investment plan for her, and I helped her budget, teaching her the financial literacy she'd always deferred to me. This was a new form of family support, one built on transparency and genuine care, not on silent expectation or exploitation. She started taking art classes, something she'd always wanted to do, finding a quiet joy in creating. It wasn't the retirement she had envisioned, but it was her future, reclaimed. Aunt Grace, surprisingly, had reached out after the settlement. She acknowledged the pain Jason had caused, and for the first time spoke openly about her own reasons for distancing herself from the family years ago. A pattern of financial manipulation she'd recognized in Jason even then. Our relationship, once distant, began a slow, tentative mending, built on a shared understanding of past hurts and a mutual respect for the boundaries we had both learned to draw. One crisp autumn evening, a little over a year after that frantic call from Mom, I found myself on my balcony. The Asheville skyline twinkled in the distance, and the cool air carried the scent of wood smoke. I had just finished a long shift, but instead of the familiar exhaustion, there was a deep, quiet contentment. My plants were thriving. A gentle breeze rustled through their leaves. I thought back to the woman I was a year ago, accommodating, burdened, silently resentful. The journey had been painful, filled with anger, despair, and the shattering of deeply held beliefs about family. But it had also forged a new Emily, one who understood her own worth, who knew how to draw boundaries, and who chose her relationships with intention. I picked up a mug of herbal tea, its warmth seeping into my hands. A peaceful smile touched my lips. The scars of betrayal lingered, a reminder of the deepest wounds that can come from those we love most. But they were no longer open wounds. They were healed, strong, and had taught me a profound lesson. I had reclaimed my life, found solace in my newfound independence, and understood that true family wasn't about blood, but about trust, respect, and unconditional love. And sometimes the greatest act of love is to stand firm, to say no, and to protect what truly matters.